Hello everyone, I hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today I'm going to be doing part 2 of the 10 cards 1 kit using the My Monthly Hero April 2018 card kit. Okay, so we're going to jump in with card number 6. And I really wanted to use this fancy die here, so I'm going to take this and die cut it out using a piece of white cardstock. My cardstock is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches and it fit perfectly. So you would just want to make sure you get your die straight on your panel if you pre-cut your panels. But once I have that done, I actually took my white card base I want to use, and I want the frame die to be the perfect size for my card base. So I'm trimming off a little less than 1/4 inch. That way my frame will cover my entire card base. So we're going to set that aside. And next I want to use these inks. And I have a piece of Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. Now I'm going to take the frame that I die cut. I kept the inside piece. I'm going to actually use that as a mask. So taking some temporary adhesive, I'm going to adhere that to my Bristol Smooth cardstock. Now this cardstock I hadn't trimmed down yet. I figured I'll trim it down later on. So the inside piece will be my mask, and I want to add color behind that real pretty floral pattern on that fancy die there. So I'm just going to go in first with the Fiesta yellow ink. The blending pad that I used, I'm actually going to use it for my green, to create a green. So I'm just using one side of the pad here. I'm going to go over the yellow ink with the Fiesta teal ink, and then there's where I create my green ink. Now once I have that done, right now you're looking at it going, what is she doing? It looks like a hot mess. Well, it's going to get worse. I'm going to go in where the center flower would be with the Fiesta red, and then I'm going to go over the bottom portion of my panel with the Fiesta teal. I'm just kind of slightly overlapping a little bit, just creating kind of like a variance of color all around the top and bottom portion here. Now I wasn't worried too much about blending at all. I'm going to go in right now with the Fiesta yellow and just add a little bit of yellow in just certain areas. Now it looks like a big mess, like I said, but when you add your frame die over the top, that background, it looks so pretty. So you can't mess up with this card doing that. I just suggest making sure that you keep that inside piece to your fancy die frame here. Now I marked off the top and bottom with my pencil, and then I'm just going to trim this panel down, and then this panel should fit my card base perfectly. Okay, I'm going to use my tape runner and adhere that directly to my card base. I'm going to flip it around. Once I have that adhered, I'm going to adhere my my frame here. I'm just going to use my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to adhere that directly on my card base. I'm going to go around the entire edge of this frame, and then around a few of the larger flowers that had white spaces, just so it secures really well to my card base. And I think with the white frame and that colored background, it just adds a real beautiful softness, a real dainty look. I really like it. Here you can see the color variance. I think it looks so pretty. Okay. Now we can talk, so don't throw away your centerpiece when you die cut. Now we're going to work on our focal point. In the stamp set, there's the little mouse with the beautiful little dress. I'm going to grab her, and then just using my Memento Tuxedo Black ink, I'm going to stamp her 3 times. I want 3 of these mouses, 3 of these mice to be dancing in the center of my panel. So using the inks kind of as a reference, and those are the colors that I'll color each one of those dresses. So I have a yellow and a teal and this is actually a pink. So I'll give you a close-up of what they look like. And this little gal did come with a coordinating die, so you could die cut her out. Okay, I'm just going to arrange them in the center of my card base, the yellow and the teal, and then I did pop up my little gal that's wearing the pink dress with some foam squares. We're going to place her in the center, and I think that looks so pretty. Now for the sentiment, I chose the word bellissima. I believe that means beautiful in Spanish, and so I'm going to stamp that on a piece of black cardstock. I used my anti-static powder tool, and then using Versamark ink I'll stamp my sentiment, and then I'm going to go over the top of that with some Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White embossing powder, and I'll go ahead and melt that. I did trim it down block style with my scissors. Now I'm going to add some foam tape behind it and place that right below my little gals there. Now for a little sparkle, I decided to go in with some Nuvo glitter drops. These are White Blizzard, and it actually picks up the color really well that's behind the panel. I ran around the centers of the flowers. Now moving along to card number 7. Okay, I wanted to use the guitar that was in the stamp set. So this is actually watercolor cardstock here. I actually trimmed it down to 4 1/4 by 2 1/4. I'm going to take one of the guitars and I'm going to stamp it right in the middle of this panel. I'm going to flip the guitar over and stamp it on the left and right side of the center guitar. And then I'm going to flip it over again and stamp those on the ends. I thought this was a fun pattern to create using the guitar. I like doing this with spoons too. Okay, I did stamp it with some VersaFine ink, so I'm going to go over the top of my guitars with some Nuvo crystal clear embossing powder, and I went ahead and melt that. Now I colored these in with the inks that came in the kit. I'm going to start off by coloring in the center guitar with the Fiesta red. And that was my little buddy's tail. She came by to see what I was doing. And I didn't stamp, or I'm not going to color in the center guitar red. I'm actually going to color in the left, all the way to the left with the red ink. I'm actually going to use all 3 colors. And then I'm just cleaning off my brush off to the side. And then I'm going to mix a blue and the red together to create a purple. And then I just colored in the rest of the guitars with the colors. I did mix the yellow and the teal to make the green. But those are my colorful guitars. I did go over my guitars with my Wink Estella. I did have to wipe my brush off in between because it was picking up the paint. I'm going to trim down this panel just a little bit off the top to make both top and bottom even. And while I have my paper trimmer out, I decided, I got a little ink smudge on the end there, so I was trying to wipe it off. I'm going to use some of this mulberry paper, using my guitar panel as kind of as a guide to know where to cut. I cut out a strip of the green, and then using the green paper as a guide, I'm going to cut out a strip of the purple, just making sure my ends are a little bit more straighter. And then using the purple mulberry paper as a guide, I'm going to trim down the blue. So when I have all 3 of these layered together, you'll see the edges of each color, and I think that's going to look really pretty right behind the guitars. I just had to straighten up my line there. Okay, now I did use I tried using my tape runner for the mulberry paper, but it didn't work very well at all. So I ended up using my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I layered all 3 of the mulberry papers together. And then I did actually pop up my guitar panel with some foam tape and place it on the very top green mulberry paper. Now I cut out a panel using a rounded corner rectangle die. This is an infinity die from Hero Arts. I'm going to place my guitar panel with the little ruffles a little bit towards the top. And now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. My sentiment for this card says, feel the music. I'm going to stamp that in the bottom right. And then just to add a little bit of accent, I'm going to take one of the little flourishes that are in the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that right next to my sentiment. I'm just using a standard A2 size card base. I'm going to directly adhere this panel to my card base, which is a shockerooey because usually I like to pop it up. But I thought I'll be good with this card. Place that in the center. Now, to make my guitar stand out a little bit more, I'm going to go in with some glossy accents over the base of my guitars. That way when it dries, it will dry clear and shiny, and it'll give a nice glossy effect to those guitars. And then once I have that done, that finishes off card number 7. Nice, bright, vibrant colors. Here's a close-up. Okay, we're going to move along to card number 8. I want to make a birthday card, so of course we got to stamp a cake. I'm going to use my Memento Tuxedo Black ink to stamp it. And then I did color in the cake with my Copic markers. Now I skipped the coloring and the die cutting. This cake did come with a coordinating die, so I just cut it out. Next, I'm taking, this is actually a piece of Strathmore Bristol cardstock. I wanted to create a rainbow background. So using my blending tool, I'm going to go around the very top portion with the Fiesta Red, kind of going a little bit, shading a little bit lighter as I get a little bit lower towards the center of my panel. Next, I'm going to go in with my Fiesta Yellow. I had to grab a new blending pad because the one I had green on it. So I went over the entire middle with the Fiesta Yellow and kind of blended it up towards the Fiesta Red and so forth and so on, just creating a rainbow effect. But that's my background panel and I think it looks so fun. I'm going to take a stitched rectangle die and I'm going to cut that panel out in a little bit. I'm actually going to add some water. The ink that came in the kit is a reactive ink, so it reacts with water. So it's very similar to distress inks or distress oxide inks, and so I really like that effect. I'm just going to dab off the color, and I wanted it a little bit more intense, so I'm going to add a little bit more droplets. Now the reason I'm splattering is because the water bottle that I have is a fine mist bottle. And so I wanted bigger droplets, so I spray it in my hand and then I shake it off on my paper. So once my panel's cut out, we need to work on our sentiment. So I have a piece of white cardstock here, and I wanted to use the happy that was in the stamp set. Now this happy is actually hollowed out, so you could color in the inside of it. So I'm taking my Versa Fine ink. I did use my anti-static powder tool. I'm going to stamp it once, and then I'm going to move my paper up or down a little bit, and I want to stamp it again on the very top. I want to stamp 3 happies right in a row. If you look close, actually my rows were kind of off a little bit, but it wasn't that much for me to restamp everything, so I just went with it. I'm going to stamp it one more time. And I figured there's 3 color inks in the kit, so I'm going to color each one of those happies with each one of the inks. I did use my clear embossing powder and melted it and then added my ink to the center. I just used a water brush to color it in. Okay, now I'm going to use another rounded corner die here. I wanted a real small panel for the center. I wanted my background, my rainbow background, to really stand out. So I think this is the perfect size here. I'm just gonna add a piece of tape and die cut out that little panel. Once that was done, I did cut out one size larger panel using black cardstock to back up my happy panel there. Now we need the birthday, so I'm going to place that on an acrylic block. I was debating on whether to stamp it on a piece of white cardstock or directly on my card base, and I decided to stamp it directly on my card base. I'm going to use some VersaFine ink to stamp my happy or birthday. Just making sure my sentiment's centered, so my birthday's centered. And I think that looks great. Now I'm going to directly adhere this panel to my card base. Lovely. Now I'm going to pop up my happy, happy, happy panel with some foam squares and place that back on the card base. And then once I have that back on the card base, I will add one foam square to my cake and place that right above the happies. And then for bells and whistles, from my stash, I have some gems. These are like an iridescent gem. I have green and pink, and I have blue. I'm going to use my glue here and just add a few on the top left and then a few on the bottom right. And then for my cake to really stand out, I went over my icing with my glossy accents. And that finishes off that card. Very fun and festive card. Okay, moving along to card number 9. We're going to take this little, it's a little jalapeno or a pepper. I'm using my Memento ink, and on a piece of white cardstock, I am going to cover this entire panel with these little peppers. Now for me, I thought it was a jalapeno. So I was gonna, my intentions were to color this little pepper in with greens and reds. And I just used my Copic markers. But as I did that, I thought it looked a little too Christmassy. So I just decided to go with the red peppers, we'll say that. I just colored, I re-stamped and then colored them in with the red, my reds and oranges. I'm going to take a stitched rectangle die and cut out my panel. This was a super easy card, but it turned out so fun. It would make a fun Mother's Day card. I always tease my mom. Now I popped this panel up with foam tape, and I'm going to place that in the center of my card base. If I can get it on there straight. Okay. Once we have that done, we need to work on our sentiment. So I grabbed a piece of white cardstock, and of course I need the sentiment that says "You're one hot mama." That just cracks me up. I don't know why. I mean, it just cracks me up. But I thought it'd be fun. The hot mama is actually hollowed out, so you can color it in. So I wanted to create like a flame look on the very bottom. So I'm going in with my R59, my Copic marker, and coloring the very bottom. And then for my next color, I'm going to go in with an R36, I think. I have to see what color it is because I'm not sure. R35. I was close. And then I'm going to do the second layer, and then for my third layer, I'm going to go in with YR04. It's a real pretty orange. So that creates a real nice, like a fiery look. Okay, I trimmed down. I blocked up my sentiment, trimmed it down, and I'm going to add a piece of black cardstock right behind it. So I'm just going to glue my sentiment to the cardstock and then use my scissors to trim it down. And I should have zoomed my camera out, but I didn't, so you get a close-up view of my ink-stained hands. Okay, once we have that done, I popped up my sentiment, placed it in the center of the card, and then I went around all the jalapenos with my Wink Estella shimmer pen. And then I'm taking, of course, my white gel pen and cleaning up all my messies. But that finishes off that card. I thought that was a really fun card. Okay, moving along to card number 10. Of course I had to use the little birdie that's wearing the sombrero in the stamp set. I'm just going to stamp that with my Memento ink on a piece of white cardstock. And I skipped the coloring, but I did color it in with my Copic markers. And I'm just adding some white detail with my white gel pen here. Now I did decide to stamp a cactus, so I did that off screen, and I'm going to color that cactus in with my green Copic markers. I thought if the birdie was standing on top of the cactus, I think this was my favorite cactus in the stamp set because I used it a lot. But I thought it'd be fun if the birdie was going to be standing on top of that cactus. So I'm going to take both dies that coordinate, and I'm going to cut out both my images. And then, after they are cut out, we're going to work on our card base here. Well, this is another piece of white cardstock. I'm taking 2 of my stitched rectangle dies, and I'm going to cut out a frame. I'm just layering them both together to create a very thick frame. Once I have that done, I like these dies because they're stitching on both sides, so it creates a real neat effect. Now I'm going to add foam tape behind my frame and get that ready to go. Next, I have some vellum. Actually, this is new to me. It's a wood grain vellum sheets. These are from Hero Arts also, and it's really nice because it has a real soft wood grain texture background. And so I thought it would look really neat on the background of this card. This card's a pretty simple card also. Now I'm coloring in the vellum. This is actually the back side of the vellum with my Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. This is going to give me just a slight hint of color in my background. You can't tell here, but once you put it against the white card base, you'll be able to see the two-tone. And that is windy. It's windy out, so I'm sorry about that. But once I have that adhered to my frame, I'm going to pop up my little cactus here. Just using some foam squares. It was a beautiful day, and then they're saying we're going to get snow on the weekend. It was almost 70 over here. Crazy weather. Okay, I'm going to pop up my birdie with some foam squares and place him right on top of the cactus there. Now we need a sentiment. For the sentiment, there's a sentiment that says, I want to say aloha, but no, it says hola. And it's a hollowed out sentiment also. So I'm going to just stamp that on a piece of white cardstock with my VersaFine ink. And then I just use some yellow Copic markers to color in the inside of my hola. Now, instead of block cutting this out, I decided to grab one of my, these are essential speech bubbles from My Favorite Things. This was the perfect size. So I'm going to cut out a little speech bubble for my hola. I'm going to pop that up with some foam squares. Remove the backing, and I was going to place it on there, but realized I needed to double up on 2 of those because when it hit my frame, it didn't level out. Okay, we're going to put that right next to our birdie. Lovely. Now I'm going to adhere that to my card base, and I did use glue. I used my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to glue that vellum to my card base. But that finishes up. Well, no, we're going to add some bells and whistles. I decided to go in with some clear droplets. These are 2 different sizes, and they're from Pretty Pink Posh. They're beautiful, they look like little water droplets, and I added a few here and there. To make my little birdie's eyes stand out, I did go in with some Nuvo Ebony Black crystal drops over the eyes, just so they stand out. And that finishes off that card. Here's a close-up of that card. Now here's a quick look at all 5 cards that I made today using the My Monthly Hero April 2018 card kit. I hope this gives you a bunch of different ideas on how to use the kit. I try to go different I really enjoyed using this kit. I thought it was so versatile and so fun. A lot of cute elements in there and a lot of uses you could use with the inks and the dyes. Thank you so much for stopping by, guys. I love to hear your comments. Please leave them below. I wish you a fantastic day, and we will... Oh, I'll leave links below. I think the kit's still available, guys, if you're interested. But have a fantastic day, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.